Thanks so much for having me and for publishing the story. It's my first time being published in Omenana as well. I'm very, very excited to be among such a great list of writers, so thank you. My story is called The Third Option. I met myself in the mega city a week ago. It had never happened to me before, though I'd heard whispers of rumors that it had happened to friends of friends, people I hardly knew. I thought that I had been more careful. I was about to eat noodles and soup in a Chinese restaurant on Z Street. My waitress, the one who had taken the order from me, had changed shifts, and I was looking at my phone, scrolling through the surgeries I'd need to do that afternoon, when the new one arrived with my food. I looked up as the bowl was put down, and my words left me. Though it was inappropriate, she sat down opposite me. She must have been 20 or so years my junior, but the anti-aging pills and technologies we have access to in the city made it hard to tell. It was like a mirror had just slid into the seat. For a moment, we just looked at each other, examining our faces with the intensity and disinterest that you apply when you brush your teeth at night. I could see the birthmark on my neck was there, but the scar above my eyebrow from the bottle that fell off the fire escape and clipped me over the head last year was not. Of course, it couldn't have been there, but it was impossible not to pick. Were my ears that large? We both reached up to touch our left lobe at the same time. So they were. Her hands were like mine too, long fingers. So strange to look at them out on the table like that, ungloved, touching everything. Her nail polish a cerulean blue, a tattoo on the wrist. Reckless. Who are you? Her voice sounded like mine, but the accent and rhythm was different. That's how they spoke in the village. Slower, no rush, a lack of elocution. I could have asked her the same question, but I didn't, because of course I had some inkling of what had happened, an understanding of how this was happening. And it was one that I had no interest in sharing with her. The woman claimed her name was Ketiwe. She'd run away from her family in the village and had come here to the megacity to seek a new life. It was a story I'd heard hundreds of times before, from crack addicts and single moms and injured workers, all of them the gloveless, all of them so unaware of the extent of what had been done to them, all of them thinking that by changing something, doing something different, working harder, they could alter their outcomes. They didn't understand that the urge to come here was pre-programmed, just like we needed it to be. How could they, poor things? I watched her mouth move, wondering if I too slanted my lips to the left. She had a chipped tooth, stains on some from smoking. She hadn't been taking care of herself. Soon she'd look older than me, and with that type of behavior, couldn't blame her. Words and complaints were gushing out of her like a torrent, and she was drawing attention. I held up my hand in a gloved stop sign. Please, we can't talk here. Finish your shift and I'll wait for you outside. Get up now and carry on as if this never happened. I ate my noodle bowl, left my money on the table and walked across the street to sit at the park where I could see the entrance to the restaurant. I called the hospital, cancelling my surgeries. They'd be fine without me for one afternoon. As I sat, legs stretched out on the wooden bench, half an eye on the exit of the restaurant and half on the park, I thought about her story. They all believed they came to find a better life. This was partly reinforced by the fact that none of them ever went home again. Evidence of success, some might say, but it was success of the system rather than any one of them. The reality was that this meant one of two things. Either they found themselves and confronting this was too much for them, so they kept it a secret, or they lived the life we'd designed for them and were too ashamed to admit that they were struggling, so said nothing, not wanting those they'd left behind to smirk and snigger at their failed dreams. Or, I suppose, there was a third option. They didn't make it. While thinking, this bench that I'd sat in many times before after similar noodle bowl lunches took on a new interest. I imagined what it would be like to take off my gloves and run my fingers along its grainy wood, what a splinter might feel like, how the soil at my feet would crumble and stick my hands, how wrinkles might feel, what I'd look like if I stopped taking the pills and going for my annual facial rejuvenation, what it might be like to visit the village, to have a chance at a different life. Look what happens when you're curious, I said to myself. This, you've made a real mess of things. There could be hundreds of me all over this city right now, and it was my own fault. Or there could just be her, but this was unlikely. I'd need what to decide to do, and I'd need to decide it fast. Uncertainty about the lesser versions of yourself never served anyone. Time passed slowly, day dawdling into evening. Eventually, she exited the restaurant, looking up and down the street, her face, my face, stricken with shock. I whistled and waved, and she looked over at me, beginning to cross the road without checking for traffic, jolting at the scooters that screeched at her. She made it across, and I had the grace not to feel disappointed. So I'll stop there. Thank you so much.